Welcome to the South Carolina Senate District 44 Forum with our candidates Debbie Bryant and Chris DeLorme. And this is part of our special kickoff evening for the North Area Democrat relaunch of candidate forums. So this event is being hosted by the North Area Democrats and co-hosted by the Charleston County Democrat Party. My name is Kelly Gorby. I'm here with the East Cooper Democrats, and I am so excited to welcome my friend Smarell Nicole Brown. She is taking on the leadership role of chair with the North Area Democrats, and will be joined by her precinct coordinator, Celia Ballou. And the club's been on a little hiatus, but we're so excited to have them both on board and have Smarell. Many of you might already know her. She worked on the Steyer campaign. She is a business owner in town, and she also has a children's nonprofit, Raising Sages. So I want to give her a moment to introduce herself. We're so excited to have her. Smarell, take it away.
First, thank you again, Kelly. I feel like we're repeating ourselves, but thank you so much for spearheading this. I would not have been able to do this without you or Sajid or anyone else that I have pestered. But I am really, really excited to be here. I think there's so much going on in Charleston, South Carolina, and North Charleston especially. It's the reason that I actually changed my zip code because I believe that we need passionate people like yourselves to stand up and not just give us good policies, but to follow that policy with some real action. So I'm really happy that you guys have stepped up, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about both of you. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you, guys. A little bit about the forum. So each candidate is going to have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes to answer each question, and then 2 minutes for their closing statement. And they have already received the questions, so we won't be taking any questions in the chat this evening. But what we will do is alternate which one starts first so that everyone gets a chance to speak first. And we just ask the candidates if they would put themselves on mute when they're not speaking. Smarell is going to have her phone on a timer, and when the 2 minutes is up, she's just going to let her phone go. It is no reflection to anything that you've said. We just have to stay on schedule. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Smarell to moderate the evening. Thanks, Smarell.
All right, I think we're gonna dig into something that is really, really important to me, and that is our eviction rates here in North Charleston. North Charleston has one of the highest eviction rates in the country. What do you think the real problem is, and how will you address it if elected? I think we'll start off with Mr., I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Mr. DeLorme?
Close enough. All right, so I see this as a couple issues that we have currently. The first, I think, is the minimum wage in South Carolina, which is currently 7.25. I think what this pandemic has shown us is that 7.25 is simply just not a living wage. There's been previous legislation that has been introduced in the State House that would have proposed $10 in 21, 11 and 22, and 12 and 23. Obviously, that did not pass, but I think that would be a good start. Additionally, I think the eviction process in South Carolina is simply confusing and cumbersome for renters. Streamlining the process and rates afforded to renters would go a long way in reducing the rates of eviction. So I would challenge our local law school to open up a legal clinic to help eviction rates and to help renters know their rights, because that has shown that defendants have an increased chance of winning when they actually know their rights. Third, I would see parts of the CARE Act that was enacted federally recently should have been extended to the whole of South Carolina. If we were to look at the CARE Act, only 28% of the properties were covered. That's if you had a federally backed loan. The only reason we didn't see an increased rate of evictions is because the South Carolina Supreme Court stepped up and stopped evictions. But that has recently expired, so we are doomed to see increased rates. Despite this, the governor and the State House should have extended coverage for the entire state given this current pandemic. And that simply didn't occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Same question goes to you.
Sure.
Has one of the highest eviction rates in the country. What do you think the real problem is, and how will you address it if elected?
Thank you. Let me start by saying thank you for this opportunity to join this group today and have the time to meet you, you all, the North Charleston, in this North Charleston Forum. Chris, it's finally my great pleasure to be able to meet you, even though it's in this forum and we missed the opportunity before, but hello, and hope everything is well for you. I am Dr. Debbie Bryant. I'm a nurse, and these issues that you bring up are the reason that I decided to run for office. I am the mother of 2 young adults now who are trying to get themselves into a place where they can manage as adult and have enough income to take care of themselves. And my son actually lives in North Charleston, and because of what's happening now with the COVID and unemployment, he's found himself in this position. Luckily, he has parents that's able to step in and help him out, so that's quite an opportunity a lot of people don't have. So I think the real problem is not one problem. Chris certainly gave us a good start in talking about affordable housing, what that means, minimum wage, and individuals having an opportunity to actually kind of pay for the rent that they have, or to even think about trying to be a first-time homeowner. Also, the runaway development that we have, that we are going after more and more high rises and those kinds of opportunities rather than thinking about affordable housing. So what would I do? For me, a lot of these things are new information that I think the first thing I have to do is listen to what your ideas are. You all are in this position. This is not something that started yesterday, and with the COVID crisis, there's just going to be more. So we need to talk and find out where you want to go.
I do apologize. I'd like to give you guys a little bit of time to actually just go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm sorry, I just got straight to it.
I was trying to back into that. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Ms. Bryan, you kind of tried to segue. So since you were already speaking, if you can just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. So again, I'm a nurse. I have a terminal degree in nursing practice, so it's Dr. Bryant. I work at the MUSC in the College of Nursing. I've been there and at the university for quite a long time. My nursing practice has always been in community and public health nursing for the last 20 years or so. I stepped into this because of my history in nursing and what I had seen and understood on the ground when trying to help individuals access healthcare, access these kinds of resources that you were talking about that's around public health, transportation, housing, all of those services that when someone cannot have opportunities for health insurance and health care, it spills over into all of these other areas. So because of that history and that challenge that I have seen and noticed in communities for such a long time, that gave me the opportunity to think about how I could use my service in this state a little bit differently. And after the COVID crisis, I thought this is the opportunity that we need new leadership in the State House. We need someone who cares about all people, not just those who are at the top of the economic chain for our state. So I felt that this is something I could do to serve, so here I am. Thank you.
And Mr. Chris, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Chris DeLorme. I am a product of a public education. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I'm a lawyer. I currently work for the Defense Health Agency, which is a component of the Department of Defense. I've been doing that for a better part of a year. I grew up on the West Coast. I was immediately a disenfranchised youth, decided to join the military, that pretty much straightened me out. Decided to become a defense contractor after that, and then took the long way, went to college, then law school, then went back to working as a defense contractor. I live in Hanahan with my 3 little kids. 2 of them currently go to the Berkeley County School District. One's too young. And I decided to run because when I moved back, I saw our leadership, especially this seat, was running just unopposed for so long. And I frankly thought his moral and ethical grounds were eroding, and he had a lack of humility. So I decided to look into running, and I decided I found some issues that I was really passionate about, like the educational system here in South Carolina has only been fully funded 8 times in my lifetime. We rank in the lower third in almost any major statistical category. We have about 1 million residents on Medicaid, but we're one of 19 states that didn't expand it. So it's going to cost us 25% more in the long run. We are also one of 13 states that is extremely gerrymandered. And by that, I mean, if you look at our 7 congressional seats, only one has changed hands in the last 10 years from the last census. And that was obviously the last election cycle with Mr. Cunningham. So that's a couple of the reasons why I decided to run. And I look forward to answering more of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you both. Let's get this back here. Okay, let's get to our next question. With increased unemployment due to COVID-19, more people are having to be creative to find new sources of income. What type of resources are you going to put into place, or have you already put in place, for startup entrepreneurs and small business owners? This question can go to you, Mr. Chris.
Okay, sorry. The first issue I see with helping small startup entrepreneurs and small business owners was how the CARE Act was written. It was simply too broad, too inclusive of businesses that probably didn't need the help. And by that, I mean 500 employees is a lot of employees. So while the intent of the legislation seems spot on, the execution of the law was terrible at best and probably negligent at worst. Additionally, our state legislature could have written legislation to help. Additionally, the state does have some economic incentive programs for small businesses and startup, but I would increase like the tax credits for job creation, especially in Berkeley County. I would also look at local programs to back up local businesses in South Carolina. And this could occur on the national level when we need assistance from the federal level. It seems very recently that we have been adversaries with the federal government, especially in my lifetime. And if we are more of partners instead of adversaries, we would likely have more funds available for our citizens to use for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Ms. Debbie, same question to you. With increased unemployment due to COVID-19, more people are having to be creative to find new sources of income. What type of resources are you going to put into place, or have you already put in place, for startup entrepreneurs and small business owners?
So I agree with Chris that the problems that we saw in the CARE Act is something that shouldn't have happened. And this is what we face all the time when our systems are not realizing that just by writing a law and not considering where and how it is executed really puts small businesses and people who need the resources the most in a bad situation. So from that, the other thing that I would think about is how we can come up with low interest loans so that small businesses and entrepreneurship can happen. Also maybe training programs to help people understand how to use those systems and how to grow and develop a pipeline so that you can feel competent and qualified to grow into a small business and become an entrepreneur. I also believe in trying to look for things like best practice, other models in other countries, in other states, so that we can find some stories and systems that are working and how we can bring those practices in. There are experts that we can tap into to help us look at developing solutions so that we can help fix and offer more opportunities in some of these areas. So I would look for models, experts. Are there opportunities for low interest loans? And also, let's not make the mistakes that we did with the CARE Act as we did previously.
I agree with you both. That CARES Act was no joke. Applying for those loans was very, very intimidating. Okay, so our next question, I'll start with you, Miss Debbie. I ran a business in the middle of a food desert, which made it tough to find food conveniently. A lot of our community has little to no quality food source nearby. And, excuse me, those without cars rely on convenience stores and dollar stores to feed their families. Yet there are still no concrete plans for a grocery store. What will you do to ensure that healthy food is accessible and affordable to all?
So what was interesting when I saw this question is that I actually worked on a committee, and this was years ago when the Navy Hospital, when they talked about turning the Navy Hospital into a clinical and non-clinical service area, and also how to use that that property across the street to draw in a grocery store and those kinds of things. This has been a problem. This isn't a new problem in North Charleston. It's been a problem for years. The answer is probably more in the question of what is keeping these companies and businesses from being attracted to the North Charleston area. Homes, businesses, to be able to want to come to that area, and then to have those stores and food items, small businesses come to do something about these food deserts. So what I would do, I think, is, again, let's ask the question, where and why are we still fighting the same problem that we have in North Charleston for 10 years? And how can our state legislator really come down to the North Charleston area to help us understand that? There are some towns that have been successful with community-run grocery stores. And that's one of those modeling product that I think we could use that's been happening in other states that might help in this North Charleston area.
Thank you. Mr. Chris, the same question for you. I ran a business in the middle of a food desert, which made it tough to find food conveniently. A lot of our community has little to no quality food source nearby, and those without cars rely on convenience stores and dollar stores to feed their families. Yet there are still no concrete plans for a grocery store. What will you do to ensure that healthy food is accessible and affordable to all?
Yeah, I think my first thing would be to educate the community. And by that, I mean, educate them in how to build a community garden, have local farmers come in and educate society on both the pros and cons of having your community garden and also the health benefits. Don't get me wrong, I grew up as a poor kid, so I completely understand that families will almost always choose the lowest cost for food. Like, hands down, you got to get the bang for your buck when you don't have a lot of money. But I think if we were to educate our communities that the goods that they could grow themselves in these community gardens would enhance their health, their welfare, and they would also probably see a return in the education. Additionally, I think maybe an idea we could float out there is like a state or local government, like Ms. Bryant would say, could buy some food and set up a local community store, or just simply donate it to some food pantries to allow access to some of these goods. You could also I mean, for a big grocery store chain, you could obviously maybe give them a tax break or incentive to open. I'm not a big fan of that. You could also, I don't know, have a public-private partnership with local farmers. So for instance, you could have like the community negotiate to use X amount of acreage on a local farm for a certain amount of money. Thank you.
Thank you both. Our next question is about the development. This question will go to you, Mr. Chris, first. With the rapid increase in development in our area, soon there will be no affordable housing left in Charleston. How will you help bring opportunities while still honoring, whoa, okay, your time hasn't started yet, hold on 1 second. How will you bring opportunities while still honoring the work of those preserving our community?
So I see a couple of issues here. I think first is the way us as a society view what home ownership should look like. It seems like most people these days view home ownership as a single family home with a spacious private yard. So that obviously has led to rapid expansion, especially here in Hanahan. You couple that with zoning rules that only allow construction of detached single family homes, and you have fewer homes for less people. Additionally, I think we should have builders building smaller homes comparatively to the past. And what I mean by that, if you were to look at this historically, the average home in America goes for like 2,500 feet now, whereas before it was 1,800 square feet. So obviously you're building bigger homes, and it's only 8% of the new construction market, whereas before new homes were 40% of the market. So this brings a sharp decline to entry-level housing. Additionally, we could work with community leaders and come up with plans to do multi-income housing opportunities. And by that, I mean, you know, multi-layered buildings where on like the first floor, you have like grocery store, second floor, maybe some condos, and then some townhouses. You have, but especially these zoning conversations need to evolve. And until they evolve in each district, we're going to run into the same issue as we are here in Hanahan, where we're just simply running out of space because it's all being built single family zoning wise. I would also increase the funding for affordable housing in the area. We could probably do that through a local, state, or a federal level. And I just think we need to listen to these recent studies where if we've shown like 30% of homeowners and thank you.
I will let you guys talk all day if it was up to me. Okay, so the next question, same question for you, Ms. Debbie. With the rapid increase in development in our area, soon there will be no affordable housing left in Charleston. How will you help bring opportunities while still honoring the work of those preserving our community?
So I think Chris brought up some very interesting ideas, and honestly, I think that's what it's going to take. I think if nothing more than what we have learned in the last few weeks in this COVID crisis is that we are in a position that disruption is bringing on innovation. And this is our opportunity to look at those disruptive processes and ask ourselves, are there other things that we can do? I 100% agree with him that in our mindset, what it means for housing and what housing is supposed to look like is maybe at this point an idea that should evolve a bit. So what does that new model look like? Can we bring in, again, these kind of best practices, expertise to help us understand how we can think about what our future looks like so that we don't continue to make the same mistakes in the past. The new development that's just kind of coming up and everybody's trying to make everything attractive for the new young families with children and school right in the middle of those communities. It sounds nice, but we are going to run out of space. we're increasing our traffic and trying to do all of those things. So I do believe that some kind of multifunctional new ideas and new kind of community systems might work, but those that have that ensure that we can have healthcare and public and private partnerships, community partnerships, all of those things together. So those are the ideas that I would want to sit around the table and work with teams to talk about, and to do a lot of listening to understand what those ideas might look like.
Thank you both. Y'all make- When natural disasters occur, it is mostly lower income areas that are impacted the worst. Those areas are heavily populated by Black and Brown communities. What programs or regulations are necessary to protect air and water quality for all of Charleston County? Ms. Debbie, this question goes to you first.
Sure. So as a nurse who's been working in public health and community health for a long time, I think that's the one thing that so many people do not realize, or not, I shouldn't say realize, but it's not on the forefront all the time. Clean air, clean water, sewage, the public health of where we work, live, and play is a right that everyone should have all the time. Also, public health infrastructure works in the space that's invisible for most people most of the time. But when you need it, it needs to work. That's where we took our eye off of the ball for South Carolina. Although we couldn't have done anything about COVID coming, we could have been more prepared and have the infrastructure in place. So this is where I believe for our state budget, we have to ensure that we have public health. Public health has to be a priority in our budget, just as schools do, education, some of these it's one of the most important things that we need to do. So I would want to ensure that that item is in our budget and we understand how to ensure that we have our public health needs at the top of our needs list in the state Senate. I'm sorry, getting my words. I think I'm so worried about the buzzer going off on me that I'm losing myself, like trying to get through it too quickly. So thank you.
Thank you. You had about 30 seconds left. Okay, Mr. Chris, the same question goes to you. When natural disasters occur, it is mostly lower income areas that are impacted the worst. Those areas are heavily populated by Black and Brown communities. What programs or regulations are necessary to protect air and water quality for all of Charleston County?
Yeah, so I think there's a fundamental problem we have in society. I think we have tended to look at business as a separate entity from government. And while that is true on certain aspects, I think we need to realize that in too many situations, we need the government to step in where businesses can ensure both the safety of our citizens and long-term viability of the economy, especially during crises or natural disasters. I think it's the government's role, especially the State House, to support the private sector as part of a healthy economic, social, and environmental ecosystem. Governments, however, need to regulate these businesses so they stop destroying the air and the water. I mean, those regulations need to be fair. They need to promote a vibrant economy. And while considering those affected by the damage done by that business, I mean, let's be honest, the reason we're talking about these conversations is because businesses are running afoul. So the government needs to rein these businesses in. When they reach outside the norm, break the law, break a regulation, or simply lobby to get favorable terms in a piece of legislation. Beyond the current situation, climate change is a great challenge to the health and livelihood of our citizens. And I think the viability of our economic and private sector depend on that. So we need to stop pitting government versus the private sector. And I think we need to come together and realize that we need to support one another and tackle these challenges to remain strong, safe, and healthy as both a state and a nation. Thank you.
Thank you both. Kelly, I believe we're out of time, right? So I should just probably let them do their closing remarks. Okay. Thank you both for your commitment to our community, and thank all of you who have tuned in so far. We will be doing forum with House 113 next. Both of you, feel free to give us your closing comments, beginning with you, Ms. Debbie.
So again, I thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation tonight. I think I would be remiss from not talking about what's happening nationally with the problems that we're having with people dying from COVID and the assault on Black and Brown communities. I am a daughter of a Black man, a sister of a Black man, and the mother of a Black man. I care about these things that are happening in our community, and I hope that I get the opportunity to serve this community so that we can level the playing field and ensure that we don't continue to have these assaults, and that we are prepared for the next, whatever the next pandemic is. I am Debbie Bryant, and my website is debbieforsenate.com, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Debbie. Mr. Chris, your closing remarks, please.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you all for hosting this Q&A. I'd like to also thank Ms. Bryant for running. I mean, I haven't seen a Democrat run for this seat in, I don't know, 15, 16 years. So it's nice to know that fellow Democrats think that enough's enough. So I just like to close with, I'd be honored to serve you. I would be honored to go to the State House and write legislation that society needs. I mean, let's be honest, common sense things need to happen in the State House, whether that's fully funding education, whether that's reducing eviction rates in Charleston County, whether that's opening up a legal clinic at the local law school where I graduated. I just think things need to reach a certain point in our society where we just need to take a step back and let common sense dictate our way forward. And my website's chrisforsenate.com if you want to follow me, if you want to just take a couple looks at issues I'm passionate about. And I look forward to Election Day, and I hope that whoever represents this constituency knocks it out of the park in November. Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in. We will be resuming in just a few minutes with House 113. Again, you can find information about our party at CCDP on Facebook or ccdp.com, or you can also find us at the North area on Facebook and Instagram. Again, Miss Debbie and Mr. Chris, thank you so much. I feel like if either one of you are nominated, I would be happy to support either one of y'all. So thank you so much for your time. Y'all have a good night.